Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I was saying that this one is the case where they were using the injections and the leakages approach. Okay. So these are the leakages, savings and then tax, and the injections are investment and then government expenditure. So where they meet, that is our output level. So with an increase in investment, that's going to cause an upward shift in the injections curve. Okay, so that is going to cause an increase in output. But if you remember the previous model that we looked at, even with an increase in investment, we saw that there was no real change. The increase in investment couldn't cause an increase in the output level. Okay, but under the keynesian model, it can. Whenever there's a change in investment, it causes a change in the output level. Okay. All right. So the next thing we'll look at is the keynesian theory of interest rate. Okay, the keynesian theory of interest rate. For the simple model that we looked at, investment was constant, which means that we were keeping interest rate constant. But it is not always like that. What if we allow interest rate to change, to vary? What is going to happen? There is a relationship between uh, investment and then the interest rate. Okay, so that is what we are trying to get at here. That what is the relationship between the interest rate and then the level of investment? How are they uh, related? Okay, so in the Keynesian system, how does interest rate affect the various uh, variables, and paramountly how does it affect the level of output? But one thing that we need to know is how do we even get our interest rate in the Keynesian system? How is interest rate determined? It is determined in the money market through the interaction of the demand for money and then the supply of money. When they come together, then they are able to get the equilibrium interest rate, which is going to cause a change in investment and result in a change in output. Okay, which means that here the level of interest rate can cause a change in output. But whatever level of interest rate that we have here is through monetary policies. Okay, so the Keynesian theory of interest rate is a monetary theory. Okay, it is only in the money market where the monetary policies are made. That is the only market where the equilibrium interest rate can be found. Okay, so let's look at how interest rates affect investment. How does it affect aggregate demand, and then how will it affect the output level or the equilibrium income? Okay, here the basic assumption is that we are looking at interest rate as a cost of borrowing money. When you go to the bank to go and borrow money, it will never be for free. You need to pay something on the funds that you are borrowing. And the amount of money that you have to pay on those funds is based on the level of interest rate, the interest that is being charged on the funds that you are borrowing. Okay. And we see firms going to banks to go and borrow before they can produce whatever goods and services that they produce. So investment depends on borrowed funds, and the borrowed funds too depends on the level of uh, interest rate. Okay, so how will interest rates affect investment? Whenever you let's just look at it in simple terms. Now we know that interest rate is the cost of borrowing money, which means that when the interest rates are high, it means the cost of borrowing money is too high. And in economics, whenever the cost or the price of something is high, we tend to demand less. So when the interest rate is too high, then firms cannot really borrow much, which means that there's going to be a fall in the level of investment. But on the other hand, when interest rates are very low, it means that the cost of borrowing is very low, which means we can demand for more loans. Demanding for more loans means that firms now have much funds to fund whatever investment that they want to do. So a decrease in interest rate will cause an increase in uh, investment. And whenever there's an increase in investment from the previous destiny that we looked at, we saw that whenever there's an increase in investment, it causes a change in or an increase in equilibrium income or output, which means that as the interest rates are affecting the investment, it is also affecting the level of output or the equilibrium income. Okay, so from the simple things that we've been looking at now, we can say that there is an inverse relationship between interest rate and then investment. As interest rate is going up, investment tends to fall, and as in interest rate falls, then investment tends to what tends to go up. So that is how interest rate affects the aggregate demand. Here, changes in aggregate demand will always have an effect on output. So whatever change in the components of aggregate demand will have an effect on the equilibrium income or output. Okay. So if now we know the relationship between interest rate and then investment, and we also know the relationship between investment and aggregate uh, expenditure or aggregate demand. We know that whenever there's an increase in investment, there's an increase in aggregate demand, right? And then we know that whenever there's an increase in interest rate, there's a reduction in investment, which means there's an inverse relationship between aggregate demand and then interest rate. With a higher interest rate, we tend to invest less, which will cause a fall in uh, aggregate demand. Okay, so we can also see that there is an inverse relationship between aggregate demand and interest rate. So if a higher interest rate is causing a fall in aggregate demand, it will also cause a fall in uh, equilibrium income, which means that there's also an inverse relationship between the interest rate and then the equilibrium income. Okay, so when interest rate falls, investment will go up, aggregate demand will go up, and then equilibrium income will go up. But if there's an increase in interest rate, investment falls, aggregate demand falls, and then equilibrium income to or fall. Okay, so this is the holding everything constant. We draw the levels of investment against levels of interest rate, and this is what we are getting. Okay, there's an inverse relationship between investment and interest rate. When interest rate falls, we will tend to invest more, which is causing an increase in aggregate demand, which will result in higher equilibrium income or equilibrium output. Okay, so this is how interest rate is able to affect uh, equilibrium income. Any question? Any question? Okay, so I guess we can move on. Okay, so the equation that we have here is just trying to link interest rate to output. Output is a function of investment, and investment too is a function of what? Of interest rate, which means that income is a function of interest rate. Okay, At a higher interest rate, we know that investment will be lower, which is causing a reduction in aggregate demand. That is the reason why output will fall. So there's an inverse relationship between interest rate and then the level of output or the equilibrium income. Okay. Okay. So as I said earlier, the equilibrium interest rate is determined in the money market. Okay. And in accounts, by now you should know that whatever market we talk about, we have the demand side and then we have the supply side. Okay. So when they come together, when they are in equilibrium, when money demand is equal to money supply, that is where our equilibrium interest rate is gotten. Okay. So we have to look at what will cause changes in money demand. As for money supply, it is fixed by the central bank, so that one is uh, not part of what the government can do or what private individuals can do. It is fixed by the central bank, so they choose to either increase or decrease it depending on what they want to do and the state of the economy. Okay, so we will look at the determinants of money demand. Okay, and I'm sure you know of the liquidity preference theory propounded by Keynes. He called the theory of money demand. He was trying to look at the motives, the reasons why people hold money. Why would people demand money? When we talk about the demand for money, we are talking about the amount of money that economic units wish to hold instead of investing them. Okay, so here Keynes he suggested that whenever an individual has money, it's either the person holds the money, that's the person demands the money, or the person will use the money to buy an interest yielding asset like bonds. Okay, so your money that you have is either you are holding the money, that's you are demanding it, or you are investing it. So what is going to cause someone to rather choose holding the money rather than holding an interest yielding asset? Okay, so based on that, he had his reasons, what he called the motives for holding money. He said that people hold money for transaction purposes, for precautionary purposes, and then for the speculative purpose. Okay, so these are the motives that he spelled out. That these are the reasons why people hold money. So let's take them one after the other. I'm sure you know all these things already. So just as I said, the demand for money is the total amount of money that all the economic agents wants to hold, okay, for whatever purpose that they want to hold it for. Okay, so the transactionary purpose or motive, the precautionary, and then the speculative. This news it kept on repeating things that they've already written. Okay, so for the transactive motive, that one is the amount of money that the economic agents will hold for their day-to-day economic transactions. Because you have to buy something, you have to pay for something, you need to hold some money on you. Those are examples that he's giving here, because you have to pay school fees, you have to pay your workers salaries, buy raw materials, transportation fares, loans, phone, recharge cards, all those things, the food that you eat. Because you have to buy something, you need to hold some amount of money on you so that you can easily buy something. We hold money because money is the most liquid form of all assets. You can readily use money to buy whatever you want to buy. So any money you hold on you with the intention that you are going to use the money to buy something, you are holding it because of the transactive or the transactionary motive. You want to buy something, and this thing depends on one, your level of income. Ultimately, it depends on your level of income, and then the quantity or the amount of expenditure that you'll be making. Okay, if you don't have money at all, you can't hold any money for whatever purpose whatsoever. You can't hold any money if your income is zero. And those who have a lot of money can, I mean, hold a lot of money to buy things. If you have a small amount of money, you just hold a small amount of money. Someone you meet someone, the person is just having some five CDs in his or her pocket. Ubisa no say, oh, the person doesn't really like walking around with money. I mean, if you have thousands of Ghana cedis, you should be putting something in your pocket just in case you have to buy something. Okay, so that is for the transaction motive for holding money. So ultimately, it depends on income and expenditure, but it has other factors. There are other factors that affect the transaction motive for holding money, like the time lags between paydays. Okay, if you take your salary monthly for 30 days, after taking your salary, you have to hold money for that 30 days. So when the time lags are quite lengthy, then people tend to hold more money. I mean, the use of credit cards and all those things. But for the purposes of this model, we are just interested in income and then expenditure, which means that the higher your income, the higher the level of money that you hold for the transaction motive. So we can say that the transactive motive for holding money is a function of income. Okay, specifically, it's a positive function of income. As your income rises, you tend to hold more money for transactions. Okay. Okay, so that's just what I said. So the money demand here, remember the transactive motive, you are still holding the demand, you are still demanding the money. So for this motive, we can see that the money demand is a positive function of what of income, which means that with time, as your income is increasing, then you tend to hold more money too for the transactive motive. That's why we are saying it's a positive function of income. So now we've seen one factor that affects money demand, and that is the income level. Okay, the income level. The higher the level of income, the higher the demand for money. Okay, you see, they've written all these things and they are writing them again. Okay, let's look at the precautionary. This one too is the amount of money that you want to hold for unforeseen circumstances. Maybe you fall sick in the night, you need some money, you put it down. Maybe unexpectedly someone will come and visit you, you need money to buy some stuffs. You see that at times you can go to your mother, you know that your mother has money. You ask her for money and then she tell that she doesn't have money for what you want the money for. Yeah, she has some money, but that money is not for the transaction motive. It's precautionary. So she's putting it down so that during the rainy days she can use it. So our mothers, they've been demanding money, holding this motive, but they had no idea what they were doing. So when they are holding money for the precautionary motive, they will never use it to buy anything, which means that they will not be shifting from the precautionary to the transactive. You understand? So whatever money that we hold just because we don't know the future because of risk in life, that one is put under the precautionary. Okay. And this one too, it depends on your income. If you have a lot of money, you can put aside a lot of money for this motive. Okay, but at times too, it depends on risk. It depends on how uncertain your future is. If you are very certain you are not going to fall sick, why do you set money aside for health? Okay, so but ultimately, this one too depends on the level of income. If you have a lot of money, you can put more money aside for the precautionary motive. Okay, and then the last one is the speculative demand for holding money. This is what depends on interest rate. Okay, So for this one, this is where Keynes was saying that whatever money that you have is either you hold it or you use it to buy an interest yielding asset. Okay, you buy a bond because of the interest on it, and the interest that you receive on buying the bond depends on the level of interest rate. Okay, so now assuming you have money, you have 1,000 Ghana. Okay, you are holding 6,000, and you've used 4,000 to buy bonds, and the interest rate was 10%, assuming it's for 1 year. So after the year, you are getting 10% on your 4,000, which is like hey, I said 1,000, eh? So on your 400, which is like 40 Ghana. So that is going to be your interest. Now, if there is an increase in the interest rate from 10% to 20%, you realize that if you are able to even hold the 400 CDs, now the interest on that 400 after the year is going to be like 80 Ghana. So then why don't you put more money into the bonds, buy more bonds and hold less money so that you can earn more interest. So now you rather put 600 Ghana into the bonds and hold just what? Just the 400 Ghana. So because of the increase in interest rates, now you are holding less money. Okay, and you are buying more bonds. The thing is a disjunctive. How do we call that thing? Critical thinking, either A or B. Is disjunctive, eh? So as you are going for A, it means you are not going for B. That's how this case is. The money that you have is either you are buying a bond or you are holding it. And with an increase in interest rates, you are being enticed to buy more bonds. So buy more bonds means that you are holding less money. So with an increase in interest rates, you are holding less money means that there's a negative relationship between you demanding the money and the level of interest rates. Let's look at another scenario where there was rather a decrease in interest rate. If there's a decrease in interest rate, it means that now even if you put the 400 Ghana there, assuming that the interest is 5%, at the end of 1 year, you are no more getting 40 Ghana, you are getting only 20 cedis. And you see that it's not worth it. So why don't you just keep your money? So you might even reduce the 400 Ghana that you are using to buy the bonds. So maybe you just buy 200 Ghana worth of bonds, which means that if you are buying 200 Ghana worth of bonds, you are holding 800 Ghana worth of money. Okay, so with a reduction in interest rate, there's an increase in this in you holding the money, which means that there's an increase in the demand for money. So you see the negative relationship between the speculative motive for holding money and then the interest rate. This is one side. Okay, this is one side. We can also look at it from the day side that when you are holding the money, it means that you are foregoing the interest that you could have earned on holding an interest yielding asset. So we see the interest rate as the cost of holding money. Okay, that's the price of holding money. As you are holding it, you are paying the price of the interest rate away. You were supposed to receive that on the bond, but you are not buying the bond. So if there's an increase in interest rate, it means that there's an increase in holding money. There's an increase in the cost of holding money. Okay, so whenever there's an increase in interest rate, it becomes too costly to the demand for money. You'll be forfeiting or letting go of a lot of interest that you could have earned on your bond. So whenever the interest rate is high, because you don't want to bear much cost, you rather buy more bonds. But if there's a reduction in interest rate, it means that there's a reduction in the cost of holding money. So you hold more money. Okay, you rather hold more money. So I'm sure from these two explanations, you can see the negative re- relationship between the speculative motive for holding money and then the interest rate. Okay. So now we can also say that money demand depends on interest rate. Okay. For the first two, we said that money the demand depended on income. Okay. But when we add the speculative, we can see that it is also depending on what the level of interest rate. Okay. This thing they are just saying that when they combine the speculative and then the transactional motive for holding money, they call them the transactions demand for money, and those ones they are positively related to income. And then now we know that interest rate too is negatively related to um, the speculative motive for holding money. So in all, we can say that money demand is positively related to income, but negatively related towards to interest rate. This page that we have here was just trying to explain why there's an inverse relationship between the speculative motive for holding money and then the interest rate. When you are going to buy a bond, then the return that you get on the bond, we call it the yield on the bond. Okay, and the value is equal to the price of the bond times the level of interest rate. Okay, so if you make price of the bond the subject from what we have here, then we can see that the price of the bond is negatively related to the interest rate. So when the interest rate is high, the price of the bond is low. When the interest rate is low, the price of the bond is high. So how does this affect the demand for money? We know that the money that you have is either you demand it or you buy bonds, right? It's either you demand it or you buy bonds. So what if interest rate is high? When interest rate is high, it makes the price of bonds very cheap. So if the price of bond is very cheap, then why don't I buy more bonds? Okay, this is the case where rate is high. When interest rate is high, we buy more bonds because the price of bonds will be very low. And as we are buying more bonds, it means that we are holding less money. Okay, so this one too is another explanation to why interest rate is inversely related to the demand for money. Okay, when interest rate is very high, the price of bonds will be very low. Okay, which means that people will now be buying more bonds because now bonds are cheap. Buying bonds means that you are reducing the quantity of money that you hold. Okay, you are reducing the demand for money. So as interest rate went up, price of bonds going down, demand for bonds will go up, and then that is causing a reduction in the demand for money. Okay, so this one is talking about the relationship between interest rate and then demand for money. Do we understand?
Yes.
Or do you understand?
Please, I don't understand
Your line is breaking on.
what you just said.
This one, this
The
one.
relationship between the price of bond and the you can't get it. Please, can you?
Your line.
Yes, I'm trying to say that I'm not getting the relationship between the price of the bond and the interest rates.
Oh, this one there. Just know that we are taking this from somewhere. If you do money and banking, you go deeper into this. But we just borrowed this equation. Okay, that's why I started by saying that when you go to the bond, sorry, when you go to the bonds market, the yield on the bond, the value on the bond is equal to the price of the bond times the interest rate. Okay, so it's like the price times interest rate is equal to the yield. Okay, so if we divide through by interest rate, then we are getting price is equal to y over r. And with an expression like this, P is inversely related to R, inverse variation. Whenever R goes up, P will fall. Are you with me? When R falls to P what? P will go up. Audrey,
Yes, sir.
now do you understand what I'm doing here?
Hello. Yes, please.
So this one is taken from somewhere. So holding on to this expression, whenever interest rate goes up, the price of bonds will fall. When the price of something falls, we tend to buy more, right? So as the price of bonds are falling, we will be buying more bonds. As we are buying more bonds, it means that we are demanding less money. Okay, so when the prices of bonds are falling, we buy more. Buying more means that we are reducing the amount of money that we are holding. So we buy less, we hold less money. But what we started from interest rate going up, then the price of bonds reduce. Then the demand for bonds will go up. And this resulted in a decrease in the demand for money. Okay, a decrease in the demand for money. So when we connect these two, when interest rate went up, the demand for money fell. So there's an inverse relationship between uh, the interest rate and then the demand for money. Is that okay? Crystal, do you understand? Lizzie, Lizzie, do you understand? Okay. Audrey, Audrey Mensah.
Please understand.
Okay. Audrey Mensah. Okay, I hope I mean we all do. I hope we all do. Okay, let's see what we have next. Okay, so this is what we have been talking about. Now we've seen that there's a negative relationship between the price of bonds and then the interest rate. So now there's a question: can you deduce the relationship between the demand for bonds and the interest rate? What is the relationship between the demand for bonds and interest rate? What is the Marvin? What is the relationship between demand for bonds and interest rate? Marvin,
Hello.
what is the relationship between demand for bonds and interest rate?
It's positive.
It's positive, eh?
When interest rates goes up, the
Mhm.
demand for bonds rise.
When
Yes,
Okay, so when interest rate goes up, we buy more bonds because there's a reduction in the price of bonds. Good.
the action in the price of bonds.
Yeah. Okay. Crystal, what is the relationship between demand for bonds and demand for money?
So, please, I think it's negative.
Demand for bonds and demand for money. Yes, it has to be negative. Whilst this one is going up, this one should come down. Okay, good. Ordinary, what is the relationship between the demand for money and interest rate? The speculative the demand for money and interest rate.
It's negative.
Okay, so
Hello, it's negative.
yes, it's negative. Okay, it's negative. All right. Any question?
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Audrey,
Hello.
your voice is very low.
Oh, please, can you explain the hello?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Please, can you explain the relationship between the bond and the demand for bond and then the interest rate again?
Ah, okay. Oh, just that one. That's what I said. That we are taking this one from the bonds market. Okay, the price of bond is equal to the yield on the bond divided by interest rate, and just mathematically, that tells us that there's an inverse relationship between price and interest rate. Okay, P is equal to Y over R. So it just means that P and R are inversely related. When interest rate goes up, price of bonds will fall. Is that okay?
Yeah, but then you said the relationship was positive.
What was what?
The relationship was positive.
Oh no, we didn't say that. Oh. That one was what Marvin said. The relationship between this one is the demand for bonds and interest rate. That one is positive B because when interest rate goes up, the price of bonds will fall, and that is going to cause people to buy more bonds. So the demand of bonds will go up. Okay, see you. Um, Initially, interest rate has gone up. Okay, and that is causing the price of bonds to fall. I hope you get it up to this point. That when
Yes.
interest rate goes up, price of bonds will fall, right? Whenever
Yes.
the price of something falls, the demand for that good will go up.
Okay.
Okay, so now compare interest rate to the demand.
Okay, okay, okay. I get it.
So it's positive.
Thank
Okay,
you.
all right. Any other question? The time is almost up. Do you have any other question? If you have, you can ask. Even if it goes off, we'll reconnect again. But if you don't have any question, they will end here. So, Lizzie, do you have a question?
Oh, please.
Marvin, any question?
No.
Crystal,
No, please.
Oduniama,